Welcome back, everyone. This will be part 2 of Autopsy, Room 4. And we will actually finish this short story today, and we will read the Afterword. Let's see. Once the story is over. So, before we get into it, let's go back by a paragraph, just to remind us where we're at. Let's see. The radio had started, and our character had found out that he could make a noise in order to try and warn these people that he was not dead, that he was still very much alive and could feel everything. And here we go. "Turn it down," Dr. Cisco yells, comically overshouting, and amid these noises, my own nasal sound, a desperate little humming through my nostrils, is no more audible than a whisper in a foundry. Now her face bends over me again, and I feel fresh horror as I see that she's wearing a plexi eye shield and a gauze mask over her mouth. She glances back over her shoulder. "I'll strip him for you," she tells Pete, and bends toward me with a scalpel, glittering in one gloved hand, bends toward me through the guitar thunder of the Rolling Stones. I hum desperately, but it's no good. I can't even hear myself. The scalpel hovers, then cuts. I shriek inside my own head, but there is no pain, only my polo shirt falling in two pieces at my sides, sliding apart as my rib cage will after Pete unknowingly makes his first pericardial cut on a living patient. I am lifted. My head lolls back, and for a moment I see Pete upside down, donning his own plexi eye shield as he stands by a steel counter, inventorying a horrifying array of tools. Chief among them are the oversized scissors. I get just a glimpse of them, of blades glittering like merciless satin. Then I am laid flat again, and my shirt is gone. I'm now naked to the waist. It's cold in the room. "Look at my chest," I scream at her. You must see it. You must see it rise and fall, no matter how shallow my respiration is. You're a goddamn expert, for Christ's sake." Instead, she looks across the room, raising her voice to be heard over the music. I like it. Yes, I do," the Stones sing. And I think I will hear that nasal idiot chorus in the halls of hell through all eternity. "What's your pick, boxers or jockeys?" With a mixture of horror and rage, I realize what they're talking about. "Boxers," he calls back. "Of course, just take a look at the guy." "Asshole," I want to scream. "You probably think everyone over 40 wears boxer shorts. You probably think when you get to be 40 you'll..." She unsnaps my Bermudas and pulls down the zipper. Under other circumstances, having a woman as pretty as this, a little severe, yes, but still pretty, do that would make me extremely happy. Today, however... "You lose, Petey boy," she says. "Jockeys. $1 in the kitty." "On payday," he says, coming over. His face joins hers. They look down at me through their plexi masks like a couple of space aliens looking down at an abductee. I try to make them see my eyes, to see me looking at them, but these two fools are looking at my undershorts. "Oh, and red," Pete says. "A chevron." "I call them more of a wash pink," she replies. "Hold him up for me, Peter. He weighs a ton. No wonder he had a heart attack. Let this be a lesson to you." "I'm in shape," I yell at her. "Probably in better shape than you, bitch." My hips are suddenly jerked upward by strong hands. My back cracks. The sound makes my heart leap. Sorry, guy, Pete says, and suddenly I'm colder than ever as my shorts and red underpants are pulled down. Ups-a-daisy, once, she says, lifting one foot. And upsy-daisy, twice, lifting the other foot. Off come the mocks, and off come the socks. She stops abruptly, and hope seizes me once more. Hey, Pete. Yeah? Do guys ordinarily wear Bermuda shorts and moccasins to play golf in? Behind her, except that's only the source. Actually, it's all around us. The Rolling Stones have moved on to emotional rescue. I will be your knight in shining armor, Mick Jagger sings. And I wonder how funky he'd dance with about 3 sticks of high-core dynamite jammed up his skinny ass. If you ask me, this guy was just asking for trouble, she goes on. I thought they had these special shoes, very ugly, very golf-specific, with little knobs on the soles. Yeah, but wearing them's not the law, Pete says. He holds his gloved hand out over my upturned face, slides them together, and bends the fingers back. As the knuckles crack, talcum powder sprinkles down like fine snow. At least not yet. Not like bowling shoes. They catch you bowling without a pair of bowling shoes, they can send you to state prison. Is that so? Yes. Do you want to handle temp and gross examination? No, I shriek. No, he's a kid. What are you doing? He looks at her as if the same thought had crossed his own mind. That's, not strictly legal, is it, Katie? I mean, she looks around as he speaks, giving the room a burlesque examination, and I'm starting to get a vibe that could be very bad news for me. Severe or not, I think that Cisco, alias Dr. Katie Arlen, has got the hots for Petey, with the dark blue eyes. Dear Christ, they have hauled me paralyzed off the golf course and into an episode of General Hospital. This week's subplot titled Love Blooms in Autopsy Room 4. Gee, she says in a hoarse little stage whisper. I don't see anyone around here but you and me. The tape. Not rolling yet, she said. And once it is, I'm right at your elbow every step of the way. As far as anyone will ever know, anyway. And mostly, I will be. I just want to put away those charts and slides. And if you really feel uncomfortable... Yes, I scream up at him out of my unmoving face. Feel uncomfortable. Very uncomfortable. Too uncomfortable. But he's 24 at most, and what's he going to say to this pretty severe woman who's standing inside his space, invading it in a way that can really only mean one thing? No, Mommy, I'm scared. Besides, he wants it. I can see the wanting through the plexi eye shield bopping around in there like a bunch of overage punk rockers pogoing to the Stones. Hey, as long as you'll cover for me. Sure, she says. Gotta get your feet wet sometime, Peter. And if you really need me to, I'll roll back the tape. He looks startled. You can do that? She smiles. We have many cigarettes in Autopsy Room 4, Mynheer. I bet you do, he says, smiling back, then reaches past my frozen field of vision. When his hand comes back, it's wrapped around a microphone which hangs down from the ceiling on a black cord. The mic looks like a steel teardrop. Seeing it there makes this horror real in a way. Seeing it there makes this horror real in a way it wasn't before. Surely they won't really cut me up, will they? Pete is no veteran, but he has had training. Surely he'll see the marks of whatever bit me while I was looking for my ball in the rough. And then they'll at least suspect. They'll have to suspect. Yet I keep seeing the scissors with their heartless satin shine, jumped up poultry shears, and I keep wondering if I will still be alive when he takes my heart out of my chest cavity and holds it up, dripping, in front of my locked gaze for a moment before turning to plop it into the weighing pan. I could be, it seems to me. I really could be. Don't they say the brain can remain conscious for up to 3 minutes after the heart stops? Ready, doctor? Pete says. And now he sounds almost formal. Somewhere, tape is rolling. The autopsy procedure has begun. Let's flip this pancake, she says cheerfully, and I am turned over just that efficiently. My right arm goes flying out to one side and then falls back against the side of the table, banging down with the raised metal lip, digging into the bicep. It hurts a lot. The pain is just short of excruciating, but I don't mind. I pray for the lip to bite through my skin, pray to bleed. Something bona fide corpses don't do. Whoops-a-daisy, Dr. Arlen says. She lifts my arm up and plops it back down at my side. Now it's my nose I'm most aware of. It's smashed against the table, and my lungs for the first time send out a distress message, a cottony, deprived feeling. My mouth is closed, my nose partially crushed shut. Just how much I can't tell. I can't even feel myself breathing. Not really. What if I suffocate like this? Then something happens which takes my mind completely off my nose. A huge object. It feels like a glass baseball bat is rammed rudely up my rectum. Once more I try to scream and can produce only the faint, wretched humming. Temp in, Peter says. I've put on the timer. Good idea, she says, moving away, giving him room, letting him test drive this baby, letting him test drive me. The music is turned down slightly. Subject is a white Caucasian, age 44, Pete says, speaking for the mic now, speaking for posterity. His name is Howard Rudolph Cottrell. Residence is 1566 Laurel Crest Lane, here in Derry. Dr. Arlen at some distance. Mary Mead. A pause. Then Pete again, sounding just a tiny bit flustered. Dr. Arlen informs me that the subject actually lives in Mary Mead, which split off from Derry Inn. Enough with the history lesson, Pete. Dear God, what have they stuck up my ass? Some sort of cattle thermometer? If it was a little longer, I think I could taste the bulb at the end. And they didn't exactly go crazy with the lubricant. But then, why would they? I'm dead, after all. Dead. Sorry, Doctor, Pete says. He fumbles mentally for his place and eventually finds it. This information is from the ambulance form, originally taken from a Maine state driver's license. Pronouncing doctor was, Frank Jennings. Subject was pronounced at the scene. Now it's my nose that I'm hoping will bleed. Please, I tell it, bleed. Only don't just bleed. Gush. It doesn't. Cause of death may be a heart attack, Peter says. A light hand brushes down my naked back to the crack of my ass. I pray it will remove the thermometer, but it doesn't. Spine appears to be intact. No attractable phenomena. Attractable phenomena? What the fuck do they think I am, a bug light? He lifts my head and the pads of his fingers on my cheekbones, and I hum desperately, knowing that he can't possibly hear me over Keith Richards' screaming guitar, but hoping he may feel the sound vibrating in my nasal passages. He doesn't. Instead, he turns my head from side to side. No neck injury apparent, no rigor, he says, and I hope he will just let my head go, let my face smack down onto the table. That'll make my nose bleed, unless I really am dead. But he lowers it gently, considerately, mashing the tip again, and once more making suffocation seem a distinct possibility. No wounds visible on the back or buttocks, he says, although there's an old scar on the upper right thigh that looks like some sort of wound. Shrapnel, perhaps. It's an ugly one. It was ugly, and it was shrapnel. The end of my war. A mortar shell lobbed into a supply area. 2 men killed. 1 man, me. Lucky. It's a lot uglier around front, and in a more sensitive spot. But all the equipment works. Or did. Up until today. A quarter of an inch to the left, and they could have fixed me up with a hand pump and a CO2 cartridge for those intimate moments. He finally plucked the thermometer out. Oh dear God, the relief. And on the wall I could see his shadow holding it up. 94.2, he says. Gee, that ain't too shabby. This guy could almost be alive, Katie. Dr. Arlen. Remember where they found him, she said from across the room. The record they were listening to was between selections, and for a moment I could hear her lecturely tones clearly. Golf course? Summer afternoon? If you'd gotten a reading of 98.6, I would not be surprised. Right, he said, sounding chasten. Then, is all this going to sound funny on the tape? Translation, will I sound stupid on the tape? It'll sound like a teaching situation, she said, which is what it is. Okay, good, great. His rubber-tipped fingers spread my buttocks, then let them go and trail down the backs of my thighs. I would tense now if I were capable of tensing. Left leg, I said to him. Left leg, Petey boy, left calf, see it? He must see it, he must, because I can feel it, throbbing like a bee sting, or maybe a shot given by a clumsy nurse, or one who infuses the injection into a muscle instead of hitting the vein. Subject is a really good example of what a really bad idea it is to play golf in shorts, he says, and I find myself wishing he had been born blind. Hell, maybe he was born blind. He's sure acting it. I'm seeing all kinds of bug bites, chigger bites, scratches. Mike said they found him in the rough, Arlen calls over. She's making one hell of a clatter. It sounds like she's doing dishes in a cafeteria kitchen instead of filing stuff. At a guess, he had a heart attack while he was looking for his ball. Uh-huh. Keep going, Peter. You're doing fine. I find that an extremely debatable proposition. Okay. More pokes and proddings. Gentle. Too gentle, maybe. There are mosquito bites on the left calf that look infected, he says. And although his touch remains gentle, this time the pain is an enormous throb that would make me scream if I were capable of making any sound above the low-pitched hum. It occurs to me suddenly that my life may hang upon the length of the Rolling Stones tape they're listening to. Always assuming it is a tape and not a CD that plays straight through. If it finishes before they cut into me, if I can hum loudly enough for them to hear before one of them turns it over to the other side. I may want to look at the bug bites after the gross autopsy, she said. Although, if we're right about his heart, there'll be no need. Or, do you want me to look now? They worrying you? Nope, they're pretty clearly mosquito bites, Gimple the fool says. They grow 'em big over on the west side. He's got 5, 7, 8, geez, almost a dozen on his left leg alone. He forgot his deep woods off. Never mind the off. He forgot his Digitalin, he says, and they have a nice little yawk together. Autopsy room humor. This time he flips me by himself, probably happy to use those gym-grown Mr. Strongboy muscles of his, hiding the snake bites and the mosquito bites all around them, camouflaging them. I'm staring up into the bank of fluorescence again. Pete steps backward, out of my view. There's a humming noise. The table begins to slant, and I know why. When they cut me open, the fluids will run downhill to collection points at its base. Plenty of samples for the state lab in Augusta, should there be any questions raised by the autopsy. I focus all of my will and effort on closing my eyes while he's looking down into my face, and cannot produce even a tick. All I wanted was 18 holes of golf on Saturday afternoon, and instead I turned into Snow White with hair on my chest. And I can't stop wondering what it's going to feel like when those poultry shears go sliding into my midsection. Pete has a clipboard in one hand. He consults it, sets it aside, then speaks into the mic. His voice is a lot less stilted now. He has just made the most hideous misdiagnosis of his life, but he doesn't know it, and so he's starting to warm up. I am commencing the autopsy at 5:49 p.m., he says, on Saturday, August 20th, 1994. He lifts my lips, looks at my teeth like a man thinking about buying a horse, then pulls my jaw down. Good color, he says, and no petache on the cheeks. The current tune is fading out of the speakers, and I hear a click as he steps on the foot pedal, which pauses the recording tape. Man, this guy really could still be alive. I hum frantically, and at the same moment Dr. Arlen drops something that sounds like a bedpan. Doesn't he wish, she says, laughing. He joins in, and this time it's cancer I wish on them. Some kind that is inoperable and lasts a long time. He goes quickly down my body, feeling up my chest. No bruising, swelling, or other exterior signs of cardiac arrest, he says. And what a big fucking surprise that is. Then palpates my belly. I burp. He looks at me, eyes widening, mouth dropping open a little. And again I try desperately to hum, knowing he won't hear it start me up, but thinking that maybe along with the burp, he'll finally be ready to see what's right in front of him. Excuse yourself, Howie, Dr. Arlen, that bitch, says from behind me, and chuckles. Better watch out, Pete. Those post-mortem belches are the worst. He theatrically fans the air in front of his face, then goes back to what he's doing. He barely touches my groin, although he remarks that the scar on the back of my right leg continues around to the front. Missed the big one, though, I think. Maybe because it's a little bigger than you're looking. No big deal, my little Baywatch buddy. But you also missed the fact that I'm still alive, and that is a big deal. He goes on chanting into the microphone, sounding more and more at ease. Sounding, in fact, a little like Jack Klugman on Quincy M.E. And I know his partner over there behind me, the Pollyanna of the medical community, isn't thinking she'll have to roll the tape back over this part of the exam, other than missing the fact that his first pericardial is still alive and kid's doing a great job. At last, he says, I think I'm ready to go on, doctor. He sounds tentative, though. She comes over, looks briefly down at me, then squeezes Pete's shoulder. Okay, she says. On a window show. Now I'm trying to stick my tongue out. Just that simple kid's gesture of impotence, but it would be enough. and it seems to me I can feel a faint prickling sensation deep within my lips, the feeling you get when you're finally starting to come out of a heavy dose of Novocaine, and I can feel a twitch? No, wishful thinking, just, yes, but a twitch is all, and the second time I try, nothing happens. As Pete picks up the scissors, the Rolling Stones move on to hang fire. Hold a mirror in front of my nose. I scream at them. Watch it fog up. Can't you at least do that? Snick, snick, snickety, snick. Peter runs the scissors at an angle so the light runs down the blade, and for the first time I'm certain, really certain, that this mad charade is going to go all the way through to the end. The director isn't going to freeze the frame. The ref isn't going to stop the fight in the 10th round. We're not going to pause for a word from our sponsors. Petey Boy's going to slide those scissors into my gut while I would lie here helpless. And then he's going to open me up like a mail-order package from the Horcrow collection. He looks hesitantly at Dr. Arlen. No, I howl, my voice never birding off the dark walls of my skull, but emerging from my mouth not at all. No, please, no, she nods. Go ahead, you'll be fine. You want to turn off the music? Yes, turn it off. Is it bothering you? Yes, it's bothering him. It's fucked him up so completely he thinks his patient is dead. Well, sure, she says, and disappears from my field of vision. A moment later, Mick and Keith are finally gone. I try to make the humming noise and discover a horrible thing. Now I can't even do that. I'm too scared. Fright has locked down my vocal cords. I can only stare up as she rejoins him, the two of them gazing down at me like pallbearers looking into an open grave. Thanks, he says. Then he takes a deep breath and lifts the scissors, commencing precardial cut. He slowly brings them down. I see them. Then they're gone from my field of vision. A long moment later, I feel cold steel nestle against my naked upper belly. He looks doubtfully at the doctor. Are you sure you don't? Do you want to make this your field or not, Peter? She asks him with some asperity. You know I do, but then cut. He nods, lips firming. I would close my eyes if I could, but of course I can't even do that. I can only steel myself against the pain that's only a second or two away now. Steel myself for the steel. Cutting, he says, bending forward. Wait a sec, she cries. The dimple of pressure just below my solar plexus eases a little. He looks around at her, surprised, upset, maybe relieved that the crucial moment has been put off. I feel her rubber-gloved hand slide around my penis as if she meant to give me some bizarre hand job. Safe sex with the dead, and then she says, You missed this one, Pete. He leans over, looking at what she's found, the scar in my groin. At the very top of my right thigh, a glassy, no-pore bowl in the flesh. Her hand is still holding my cock, holding it out of the way. That's all she's doing. As far as she's concerned, she might as well be holding up a sofa cushion to someone else, so someone else can see the treasure she's found beneath it. Coins, a lost wallet, maybe the catnip mouse you haven't been able to find, but something is happening. Dear wheelchair Jesus on a chariot-driven crutch, something is happening. And look, she says, her finger strokes a light, tickly line down the side of my right testicle. Look at these hairline scars. His testes must have swollen up to damn near the size of grapefruits. Lucky he didn't lose one or both. You bet your you-knows, she says, and laughs that mildly suggestive laugh again. Her gloved hand loosens, moves, then pushes down firmly, trying to clear the viewing area. She is doing by accident what you might pay 25 or 30 bucks to have done on purpose. Under other circumstances, of course. This is a war wound, I think. Hand me that magnifier, Pete. But shouldn't I? In a few seconds, she says. He's not going anywhere. She's totally absorbed by what she's found. Her hand is still on me, still pressing down. And what was happening feels like it's still happening. But maybe I'm wrong. I must be wrong. Or he would see it. She would feel it. She bends down, and now I can see only her green-clad back, with the ties of her cap trailing down it like odd pigtails. Now, oh my, I can feel her breath on me down there. Notice the outward radiation, she says. It was a blast wound of some sort, probably 10 years ago at least. We could check his military rec. The door bursts open. Pete cries out in surprise. Dr. Arlen doesn't, but her hand tightens involuntarily. She's gripping me again, and it's all at once like a hellish variation of the old naughty nurse fantasy. "Don't cut him up," someone screams, and his voice is so high and wavery with fright that I barely recognize Rusty. "Don't cut him up. There was a snake in his golf bag, and it bit Mike." They turn to him, eyes wide, jaws dropped. Her hand is still gripping me, but she's no more aware of that, at least for the time being, than Petey Boy is aware that he's got one hand clutching the left breast of his scrub gown. He looks like he's the one with the clapped out fuel pump. What are you?" Pete begins. "Knocked him flat," Rusty was saying, babbling. "He's gonna be okay, I guess, but he can barely talk. He can hardly talk. Little brown snake. I never saw one like it in my life. It went under the loading bay. It's under there right now, but that's not the important part. I think it already bit that guy we brought in. I think, holy shit, Doc. What you trying to do? Stroke him back to life?" She looks around, dazed, at first not sure of what he's talking about, until she realizes that she's now holding a mostly erect penis. And as she screams and snatches the shears out of Pete's limp-gloved hand, I find myself thinking again of that old Alfred Hitchcock TV show. Poor old Joseph Cotton, I think. He only got to cry. So that's the end of Autopsy Room 4. So now we'll read the afternote for this one. It's been a year since my experience in Autopsy Room 4, and I have made a complete recovery, although the paralysis was both stubborn and scary. It was a full month before I began to get back the finer motions of my fingers and toes. I still can't play the piano, but then, of course, I never could. That is a joke. And I make no apologies for it. I think that in the first 3 months after my misadventure, my ability to joke provided a slim but vital margin between sanity and some sort of nervous breakdown. Unless you've actually felt the tip of a pair of post-mortem shears poking into your stomach, you don't know what I mean. 2 weeks or so after my close call, a woman on DuPont Street called the Derry police to complain of a foul stink coming from the house next door. That house belonged to a bachelor bank clerk named Walter Kerr. Police found the house empty. Of human life, that is. In the basement, they found over 60 snakes of different varieties. About half of them were dead, starvation and dehydration, but many were extremely lively and extremely dangerous. Several were very rare, and one was of a species believed to have been extinct since mid-century, according to consulting herpetologists. Kerr failed to show up for work at Derry Community Bank on August 22nd, 2 days after I was bitten. 1 day after the story, paralyzed man escapes deadly autopsy, the headline read. At one point, I was quoted as saying I had been scared stiff. Broke in the press. There was a snake for every cage in Kerr's basement menagerie, except for one. The empty cage was unmarked, and the snake that popped out of my golf bag, the ambulance orderlies had packed it in with my corpse, and had been practicing chip shots out in the ambulance parking area, was never found. The toxin in my bloodstream, the same toxin found to a far lesser degree in orderly Mike Hopper's bloodstream, was documented but never identified. I have looked at a great many pictures of snakes in the last year and have found at least one which has reportedly caused cases of full-body paralysis in humans. This is the Peruvian boomslang, a nasty viper which was supposedly been extinct since the 1920s. DuPont Street is less than half a mile from the Derry Municipal Golf Course. Most of the intervening land consists of shrub woods and vacant lots. One final note. Katie Arlen and I dated for 4 months, November 1994 through February of 1995. We broke it off by mutual consent due to sexual incompatibility. I was impotent unless she was wearing rubber gloves. At some point, I think every writer... Oh, this is now from King's perspective. At some point, I think every writer of scary stories has to tackle the subject of premature burial, if only because it seems to be such a pervasive fear. When I was a kid of 7 or so, the scariest TV program going was Alfred Hitchcock Presents, and the scariest AHP, my friends and I were in total agreement on this, was the one starring Joseph Cotton as a man who has been injured in a car accident. Injured so badly, in fact, that the doctors think he's dead. They can't even find a heartbeat. They are on the verge of doing a post-mortem on him, cutting him up while he's still alive and screaming inside. In other words, when he produces one single tear to let them know he's still alive. That was touching. But touching isn't in my usual repertoire. When my own thoughts turned to this subject, a more, shall we say, modern method of communicating liveliness occurred to me. And this story was the result. One final note regarding the snake. I doubt like hell if there's any such reptile as a Peruvian boomslang, but in one of her Miss Maple capers, Dame Agatha Christie does mention an African boomslang. I just liked the word so much. Boomslang, not African. I had to put it in this story. So that finishes our first short story in Everything's Eventual. What I'll be doing for the next 4 weeks, because this should end September. The next 4 weeks, we're going to read 2 more stories from Everything's Eventual. The first one will be The Man in the Black Suit, and the other one will be called In the Death Room. So both of those will also be in their own 2-part sections. And that's just what we're doing for October. After that, we'll be reading The Great Gatsby. And if my math is correct, we'll actually be finishing that one with the year. So we'll be going into 2023 with a new book. So hope you guys are enjoying this. We'll be using these short stories from Everything's Eventual for all the way through 2025. So I hope you guys enjoy it as we go on this journey.